because we're moving over to the topic of the future of food is female. And with me here today, I have none other than Anastasia Trofimova from Your Beat, up on stage here. Anastasia, please take your seat or take your mic rather. And with us online, none other than Jennifer Stojkovic. And I leave it to you girls now to grab the conversation and to run it from now.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I hope Jen has had the opportunity to join. I actually can't tell. Oh, wonderful, Jen. Wonderful. So nice. I hope we can get you on screen. There you are. Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. This is the most exciting session of the day.
Better be. I bring in the California sunshine.
Exactly. And it's very, very much needed, Jen, today, I have to tell you. In Sweden, it's not as sunny as over there. So thank you so much for joining us.
Got quite a sun coming on me. This is my outdoor office, so hopefully I can bring a little sunshine today.
Wow, isn't that amazing? Shouldn't we all move to California? Shouldn't that be the topic of today? No. The topic of today is the future of food is female. So thank you so much for joining us. I will be moderating this session. My name is Anastasia, and I'm actually a startup founder, a food tech startup founder. And my team actually happens to be fully female, so this is very relevant. And we are joined today by Jennifer Stojkovic, who happens to be the founder of Vegan Women Summit. She's also a thought leader on the topic of women in food tech and an author of recently published book called The Future of Food is Female, which is on its way to me, at least, which I also recommend everyone to check out. But thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. I mean, the stage is really yours. I'm super excited to hear your perspective on the topic of future food is female, and also to get a little bit of insight of your journey. What led you to actually write your book in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, first off. I am sorry I cannot be there today. I'm about to set off to Vancouver for Planted tomorrow and then Israel. So there's so many food tech meetups all at once, which is so exciting to see. So for folks that aren't familiar with me, as Anastasia shared, I am the creator of Vegan Women Summit. We are a global platform of women professionals in the future of food, fashion, beauty, and biotechnology. So our goal is to inspire women professionals all around the world to create a kinder, more sustainable world. We started 2 years ago with 250 women in San Francisco. We're now 40,000 women across 6 continents.
Wow.
So we're growing very, very quickly. And the reason I started VWS and was inspired to write this book is simply because I have built my career in Silicon Valley for the last 6-7 years or so, working in the tech industry. I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of incredible founders and CEOs, but they were all mostly men. And I was often the only woman in the room. So a few years back in 2018 or so, when I started to move into the food tech space, I really saw it as becoming the next big mainstream tech industry. So when I started to do a little bit of work working with folks like Uma from Upside Foods and Josh Tetrick from Just and many of the awesome Bay Area leaders that we have, I also discovered a similar phenomenon, and that was I was really the only woman in the room. At the time back then, there was not a lot of prolific women leaders in the future of food. There, of course, was Miyoko and a few others, but it really was a male-dominated space. So I sought to create a platform that focused on how we could get more women funding, how we can inspire more women to get jobs in the space, how we could really get women to become investors, and just generally help to create more parity in this industry. The book was exactly a spin-off of that thesis. So there is no book in the entire world focused on women's leadership in food technology until The Future of Food is Female. So the goal of the book is to create that platform and elevate the stories of women all around the world that are changing the food system through technology, innovation, plant-based, cultivated meats, you name it. It is a one-stop shop of what the future food system is going to look like and how women all around the world are creating it.
That is so fantastic, Jennifer. I have to say, this is you're taking it to the next level and very much needed to bring it to the masses. Can you share some insights with us from the process of writing your book and talking to all these amazing, incredible women? What were some of the insights that you would like to share with the audience today?
So first off, the thing that I love to share with folks is, they say, why is the future of food female? And the reality is that both the future and the history of food has been female. Women have been dominating in food for centuries, quite honestly. Women have always had a special connection to food, even going back to before we could own businesses and we really were running our households. We have this connection. So it just makes sense for us to become leaders in this space. One of the most interesting things that I uncovered when writing the book was I had this thesis that, similar to how women used to lead in STEM until the last few decades, I really thought women probably used to lead in food, and something has had some sort of downturn. And that is exactly what I found. So fun fact for everybody, one of the world's first vegetarian restaurants ever in the 1800s in North America was founded by a woman. And this was actually a European woman that came over to the United States. And this was at a time way before women were allowed to have businesses, way before women even had the right to vote. She actually went on to become a big suffragette and voting rights advocate. So there's actually a deep history of women and food. And there's actually a deep history of women and animal-free food too, vegetarian food, plant-based foods, especially when you go all around the world to places like India, where I spoke to a number of founders, and places that have had cultures that have been predominantly plant-based. So that was one of the big things that I was excited to uncover when writing this book, because it really is also a testament to the women leaders that have come before us. I also knew, and I think some of you might know this stat, but women do actually produce better results as founders. You maybe heard this before, but women get about 3% of venture capital funding across the entire world. So 97% still goes towards male founders. But upon exit, they have found that women produce a 63% higher valuation than male founders. How is that possible? How is it possible that women are, quite literally on paper, better founders, but they're getting less capital? So we really kind of dive into that, and what is it that is changing that? What is it that is the break or the gap that we need to overcome? For a lot of women that I spoke to, one of the issues I think was gender bias, not just gender bias in investing, not just investors purposely saying, I'm not going to invest in you because you're a woman, but also there's a number of spaces in the food technology space that are much more related to the lived experience of women. A great example of this is, the infant and toddler category and the breast milk category. So up until a few years ago, there was almost no investment into disrupting infant formula. And now, of course, for folks that are joining from North America over there in Sweden, we're having a massive infant formula shortage. Infant formula was created 60 plus years ago, and it's about 10% of the global liquid dairy market. Massive, massive environmental footprint, massive market opportunity. Yet for the last 10 years in food technology, nobody has invested in it. Now you're starting to see lots of cultivated and cell-based breast milk companies, plant-based formula companies. Lots of people are starting to get into the space now. But it's a great example of when you have a predominantly male investor pool, they're not necessarily going to see some of these issues that they would see if they were women, because they probably never had to breastfeed before. They're not, too acquainted with the experiences and challenges of being a mother. So that's a really great example of, how food technology specifically has had gender bias in investing. I am excited to say that I profile a number of women that are disrupting that space in particular. And some of the predictions that we wrote in the book 8 months ago are now coming to fruition in the news. So we really are seeing the writing on the wall. And for folks that say, is there a big enough market? I say, well, 100% of us were babies, so of course there is.
Absolutely. Jennifer, I have to say, I think that's so amazing and important, the work that you do. And I just wanted to give you credit, because I think it's so powerful to actually showcase these stories, right? Because there are so many stories, and they inspire more women to step into the food tech stage, literally and metaphorically. I mean, you definitely inspired me when I started my food tech startup, right? So I think I just wanted to give you credit and highlight how important that kind of work is to actually spread awareness of the power of women in tech, in startups, and in food tech specifically. So thank you so much for doing that. I have to ask you before we, be given the opportunity, what do you think are the main ingredients that need to come together to cook up the perfect storm, all the puns are intended, to create the needed transformation of our food system?
You know, that is the, multi-billion-dollar question, right? What is needed? One of the things that I think is really important, and one of the reasons I'm actually really excited to be speaking to this group right now, is I think regional transformation and global transformation are very key here. And so we, thus far, until a few years ago, the majority of innovation in the food system you were hearing about coming from Silicon Valley. But we can't have a little tiny stretch of California dictating how, nearly 8 billion people eat. And so it's so important that we have this type of regional innovation because, the Swedes know what Swedish people want to eat, what the Nordics want to eat. You know what kinds of crops you have available to you. You know the challenges to your own government, to your own industries, right? It's the same thing down in South Asia. It's the same thing down in, parts of Africa. I think it's so important that we are allowing for different hubs and ecosystems to be built all around. And I also think that that is a way that women can really start to lead in particular. It's no secret that in Asia, the majority of cultivated and cell-based companies are led by women CEOs. There's also a lot that are coming out of South America. A lot, of course, that are coming out of Africa as well. They have a number of cultivated companies now, too, and they all have women founders. And so I think as we think globally about changing the food system, let's also not forget that there is entrepreneurship and innovators that are on the ground doing the work. And let's make sure that we are cognizant of that because they're going to likely be able to be more effective and more efficient when it comes to building companies there that we can support versus all of us having to expand ourselves. So that's one point that I think is very important. But at the same time, the other side to the coin, we really need to make sure that we are thinking from a global perspective. You're not too far away, a lot closer than me in California right now, to a literal war that's going on. Obviously, the disruption in Ukraine and even Russia to some extent, that's a huge agricultural powerhouse as well, is showing us that it is all connected. It is absolutely all connected. Absolutely. How can we take a look at each country and look at some of the different resources and assets that they can bring to the table? I had a conversation yesterday with one of the leaders in Canada, because that's where I'll be speaking this weekend, about how Canada has the ability to be an agricultural powerhouse and can solve some of the issues that we're facing with like pea protein shortages, things like that. I think that there is a place for every single country and region when it comes to solving the food system. It is so important that people are working together on it. It is so important that people are connected on it. And quite honestly, like, it's the best shot we've got. We don't have another option. You can't see behind me. You can see a little bit of the hills in the reflection, but they're looking really brown. We're down to a third of our water reserves here in California this year. It's not going to get better if we don't start with immediate and radical action.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Jen, with you. I'm almost tempted to say if Canada can do it, Sweden can do it. But Jen, I see that we're running out of time a little bit, but I do want to, now that we established that the future of food is female, I do want to leave our audience listening in with an actionable advice. So for investors and the community listening to us now, what would be an advice that they could action to actually help support specifically female founders in the food tech industry?
So we don't have representation of women in every single facet, right? So it starts from all the way down to your junior professionals, all the way up to your investors, right? So it's simply not enough to say, we have a 50% women team. That's great. That's a great start. What does your board look like? What does your cap table look like? Are you seeking out strategic investment from people from different backgrounds? That's a really important thing to think about, is that there is a lack of representation in the entire ecosystem, not just one part of it. So think big when you think about, how am I being inclusive as I build this company? The reason why you need to do that is because we know for a fact that diverse teams produce better results. When you have more diverse perspectives that are on your team that are thinking about your product, you are going to reach more people. That is a simple fact. You will make more money. So that is why you need to do that. And the other thing that I think is important to think about is just quite simply, there are so many different types of lived experiences. Some women are moms, some women are going through menopause, some women are Black, some women are white. You know, there's so many different perspectives. So make sure that you don't just tick a box and say, oh, I've got a woman's perspective, because they all have very different lived experiences. We're not a monolithic group of people. You need to make sure you have people from all backgrounds, regardless of what their gender is. I think each of you know this. That's why we're having this conversation today. But I think it's always good to have that reminder.
Absolutely. And thank you so much with that for joining us, Jen. I think for the audience, if we were to leave you with hopefully more takeaways, but if they're just to one exact three, check out Jen's book, The Future of Food is Female. 2, The Future of Food is Female. And 3, look at your cap table or your portfolio, and if there are less than 50% of the startups are female-founded startups, reach out to me and Jen, and we will future-proof your portfolio. Thank you so much for joining, Jen.
We're available worldwide on Amazon. The Future of Food is Female. First book focused on women in the food technology space. Pick up a copy. I promise you won't be disappointed.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Jen, today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.